Hey, welcome back to the Holiday Show podcast. We are at San Diego Comic-Con 2019. It's our last interview of the con, and we're happy to bring on the show someone that we've been trying to get for a while, Mr. Leo Partible. How you doing, Leo?
I'm doing great. It's pretty amazing.
It is, yeah. And also Alex is here with us. Alex,
hey,
how you doing?
How's everyone?
And Leo, he's into film, comic books, music, poetry, and acting. And he does all of the above with the artistry and makes it up as it goes, along like a professional. And I'm down with that. That's a pretty fun way to approach it.
Right.
But since we are here at San Diego Comic-Con, maybe we can just do a quick recap. We'll be doing a full recap episode probably next weekend. But while we're still here and we have some fresh impressions in our mind, I was wondering if we maybe do like a quick, just a quick recap of some of the stuff, the highlights that you had here at San Diego Comic-Con 2019.
My impressions. Actually, a lot of the stuff. It's weird because I didn't actually get to go to any panels just to watch, except for a couple with friends in their panels. But I did. My impression is that it actually a lot more organized. I think Hall H isn't as bad as it was before. I've waited in Hall H lines. Actually, I'm one of the hardcore nerds that went to sleep. Slept overnight. It's actually fun. Have you guys ever tried that?
No, I haven't.
It's cool. I don't know why. It's weird because it's a communal sure. Experience.
Oh, yeah.
And so I recorded. I videoed. I've taken on my phone, just previous experiences in the years, and it was pretty cool. This year, I don't think because DC, I think Sony and a few other people didn't show up. The lines weren't as long, so you can get in, except for maybe Game of Thrones. So. That was still, hard to get in. Everything else, it's exciting because there's a lot of, news that came out of the Comic-Con.
Sure.
I love the fact that the expansion of games. I love the installations were really great. The Amazon installations were great to look at because people say, "Oh, it was great. I went in and did this," and like that's great. I walked by and you experienced it for me, so that was good. Parties were good. I think the parties were great.
Which parties did you go to?
The tail end of Entertainment Weekly. I tried to make it to. I had RSVP'd for things like the Star Wars Cantina. Mm-hmm. I was going to go to the IMDb boat and I wasn't able to make it over there. There was Comic Book Defense, Legal Defense Fund, something like that. I forgot. It was great. I've seen those kinds of parties. The hangouts, we hang out at the Hilton Bayfront this year, as opposed to the Hyatt, which was closed for renovation. So that's actually the good spot to reconnect with your friends, in the industry. It's probably the better spot because you can't really mix and mingle, with at these parties because it's too loud and you just really go there to eat and maybe my friends went there to get drunk, so that's and that's always the industry people. There used to be Wired Cafe. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Uh-huh. So everybody usually, never really got outside of the Wired Cafe except they just stayed there all day and got drunk and ate free food.
Free food and drinks.
Yeah, and then there was, except for after parties, which actually the last night I went to, and then I think the Russos were there. So that was pretty good. You get to connect with people there. It's more about the experiences. I love the experiences. Yeah. We get to hang out. So there's way too much. I probably talk too much about this stuff, but my experience is always is connecting with fellow professionals and peers. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Charlotte Fullerton. She writes for Ben 10 and My Little Pony, and she was like, isn't it weird? Like you hang out with the people that you grew up with, their work. But then you have to talk to them as peers this time around. And that's what's a fun part because you still get to geek out. Mm-hmm. And there's these little moments that where we have these little pockets where we just get together. So especially in the Pro Lounge this morning, we did that too. And Legion M, that sort of thing.
Now, there's been some pretty huge announcements, especially from Marvel.
Yes.
I mean, there's some stuff that's pretty exciting. Especially the Shang-Chi announcement.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. I like how it kind of worked out because he sort of lobbied for it a few years ago on Twitter.
Right.
And so just for him to do that and eventually get the role, it's like, no, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I know his manager.
Oh.
So,
Is it Simu Liu, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know his manager. His wife is a friend of mine. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, all those other huge announcements with Blade.
That's surprising, right? He's what's his name playing from
Marshall Ali. Yeah. He had a role on Luke Cage.
Right.
So it's kind of weird. It's kind of, but oh well, he's a good actor. So
yeah,
I think he'll do well in Blade.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to that. Alex, how was your con?
That was good. Since it was a 50th anniversary of Comic-Con, I went to a lot of panels that dealt with past decades. So, like each day they had a different panel for each decade. So Thursday I went to the 70s, Comic-Con in the 70s. Friday was 80s, Saturday 90s, and today was 2000s and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to hear from the artists, exhibitors, guests, and the show producers on how the convention was like then. They weren't really comparing it how it is now. It's just how it was then. So it was cool. To hear that.
Yeah, I personally, I didn't get really a chance to be a fan and enjoy it as a con goer as much this year because I went to a ton of panels because my friends were on panels.
Right. That's what's nice. After a certain period of time, you're like, oh, my friends are on panels.
Yeah.
I get to do that.
Yeah. So my friend Robert Roach, he's working on this book about it's called Updating Line of Judah, and it pretty much documents the African diaspora. So
okay.
through the stories of Bob Marley. So the Bob Marley family is involved with this project. So he had sort of broached it at Black Comics Day earlier this year, but he couldn't really tell us anything because of an NDA. Mm-hmm. So he, on this panel, which I recorded, he kind of goes into full detail about it. So that was pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to having him on the podcast as well. I always tout, one of the people that I love going to panels for the ones that he moderates is Rob Sokowitz. He's a writer for Forbes, and he's like. He sort of talks about pop culture and the business of pop culture. So he has that unique perspective, and so all the panels that he puts together always has something interesting that I can learn from. One of the panels that I went to is Secrets of Adapting Comics and Sci-Fi to the Screen. So I thought that was pretty interesting. He had a pretty good cast of he had some pretty good panelists on that as well. Yeah, and then my friend Susie Botello, she's the founder of the International Mobile Film Festival. I've gotten to know her throughout the years, and I met her 3 years ago at her panel, and we became pretty good friends. I'm a brand ambassador for the festival now, and we were sponsors for this year's festival. So I always want to support her whenever I can. And then I had a panel.
Which is
year.
fun.
Yeah, that was
great.
fun. That's my first panel ever at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was the Heroes at the Might panel, which was moderated by Neil Halford, who's also involved with the International Mobile Film Festival. That's how we know each other. And we had a mutual friend between Leo and myself, Caitlin.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and she's on the other podcast, Pan Geekery.
Yeah, Pan Geekery, which is really good, which I recommend for our listeners. It's they go live on Twitch every Tuesday at 8:00. So it's a really good live podcast, and just going around. Every time I'd walk around, I'd always see somebody that I know, and this time around it was even more of a humbling experience because I don't know if you know, Leo, that I'm also involved with something called Comic-Con Fit.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So there's these people that I haven't met person to person, but we follow each other online,
which is nice.
Yeah. So and then they come up to me and say, hey, thanks for doing Comic-Con Fit and help keeping us motivated to be healthy for the year. So I found that always find it pretty humbling, and I'm always surprised when people come up to me. I'm still not 100% used to it.
It's a great feeling. It is. That happened to me. There's an artist, Nick Darrington. He draws for the Doom Patrol, and he connected with me on Facebook because we have a lot of the same friends.
Yeah.
And so I think last year he was like, dude, I saw you across the way. You didn't say hello, whatever. We were at this, at a gathering. And then this year, actually I was on video. I was like live streaming. And next thing you know, I hear like, Leo. And he turns around. I'm turning around. And it's like, oh, hey, it's Nick. And it's like, hey, I've been trying to get talk to you. And it was like this mutual appreciation thing where I'm thinking, dude, I mean, for me, I look at his art. He's one of the guys that I look at, and I think he's pretty amazing in terms of his material. But it's kind of neat to when somebody, just when you're with other people and you're looking at each other's work, and so that then it's like, okay, I think it's weird. You'll never get over it. I'm sure everyone I talk to who's all my professional friends, they're always like fishing for compliments all the time because you feel sad. You're like going, does anyone like my my art or my music or whatever?
Sure. Yeah.
And it's never ending. I mean, people think that even no matter, I have friends that are best-selling, New York Times bestselling, and they're still hoping somebody will say hi to them. So that's a good thing.
I guess we can continue with your story, Leo. All our heroes have origin stories. Why don't you tell us about yours?
Well, yeah. So when I was growing up, we were I was born in the Philippines, and we moved to the United States when I was really, really young. Grew up in San Francisco until I was like second or third grade, and then we moved to Salinas, which is Steinbeck country. That's John Steinbeck wrote.
Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah. East of Eden and all this, and so I went to his high school. And
cool.
So anyway, moved down here, and then I'd always been interested in comic books, and I mean, from a very early age, the first thing that I actually did was was art. So I was probably about 3 years old, and I drew on a wall, and I kept drawing on the walls, and because my parents didn't have any money to. Maybe they did, but I mean the paper was in short supply or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they. I don't even remember what it was. They did find paper. They just got tired of me stealing the pencils, and I don't know how I figured out how to use it, but I was drawing on the walls, and that was one of the first things I did. And then I grew up, and when I was in junior high school, I got involved in music and then theater. And that sort of thing. Theater was a different thing for me because it was, I recounted this story before. What happened was when I was a kid, we used to go to these Filipino-American, get-togethers, and so what happened was I actually fell in love with this Filipino girl, and she found out about it through another friend, and then she ended up saying terrible things like how you grow up, your nose is, they said your eyes are chinky, your nose is flat, you're dark, like really black and everything else, and they were really mean. I don't know what it was, but that kind of drove me literally after that. But then that set me, when I was in theater, it wasn't until I got in the theater and all of a sudden in high school where it changed for me dramatically, because it was like, somebody discovered me when they put makeup on me and let me sing. And it was a different girl. It was a white girl. So all of a sudden I had this prejudice towards my own race for years. And that kind of drove my, because I was always dating, people not of my race. But then essentially that was the narrative. The reason why I'm bringing this up, because only recently, as a Filipino-American, I only got involved with the Phil-Am Creative 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, and so that really opened up my mind, my eyes, and my mind, and it changed my writing. So it actually transitioned into what I'm doing right now in terms of my film and television,
Sure,
and comic book stuff.
For our audience, Film Creative is an organization up in Los Angeles, California.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first time. I think Mark Nazal, who's also a part, Mark said the same thing. He was like, "This is the first time I've ever been with Filipinos, here." And I think we all had. It was a surprise. Maybe Filipinos had said, "Yeah, they'd been around," but I grew up in a predominantly white area. So and that early growing up there kind of influenced my thinking in a bad way until maybe just even recently. So I have only had a better appreciation, and plus I've been going back and forth in Asia, Philippines, in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
there's something happening, and I can tell you, how that influences pop culture here in general. So. Yeah, so there's a narrative for me where it's kind of reinventing myself as a person, and actually my biggest drive is to expand myself as a Renaissance person. I think the word Renaissance actually comes from the word rebirth, rather than being able to do all kinds of different things, but it's more of a rebirth. Right. But I can do different things, and that there's more that's required now in the industry of us, in general, as Asians, as people of color, as women, to be polymaths, multi-talented.
Now, maybe you can map out how you started exploring these different areas of I guess, creativity?
Curiosity.
Yeah.
And also necessity, because I started out with drawing, but then I always loved music, so I was sing along, and then I learned piano. I couldn't learn it from the traditional way. I had to teach myself. So I don't read music, so I had finally taught myself piano. Got involved in that because I just loved music and I wanted to play it. But there's a natural thing, because you read, music and comic books go hand in hand. But also, running away from bullies, literally I had to hide, so I had to do something, So why not go to theater? Got involved with theater. And then I just, the curiosity and the interest level just took off from doing it. And of course, you love that, the adulation. When you do good work, people notice you when you do that. I mean, when I was a kid, to prevent the bullies from getting at me, I would actually draw so that people would, surround me. I knew they would always naturally surround me because they always wanted to see me draw. And then so I ended up actually befriending a lot of, when I was a kid, I was like, girls were actually, some of my best friends. So that led into me wanting to do everything, because I just had the desire to do everything. So I'm always curious. I always want to learn new things and new ways to draw. Even now, to draw, to write, to act, to direct, whatever. So those are some of the things.
Yeah, I guess maybe we can talk about some of your current projects. What do you got going on?
So currently, right now, this weekend I launched on Webtoons American Fables, and it's an anthology series that I thought, back in the day, Stan Lee and DC Comics, they launched all their material in anthologies. So Superman, of course, was on Action Comics #1. Spider-Man is Amazing Fantasy #15. So I thought, why don't I launch my characters in anthologies, but with a twist, two twists. #1, I would play in different genres, the way that DC Comics had different genres, like young romance, they had war, they had sci-fi and everything. Right. And so I wanted to play that. And then the other twist would be that what if I'm Stan Lee, step into his shoes, and I'm creating in this world, rather than I'm writing from an LA centric instead of New York centric, and then I'm looking around and it's people of color. So why don't I create superheroes that reflect who I am? Why don't I create Filipinos superheroes? Why don't I create Black and Hispanics? And then my collaborators are, of course, like hip hop artists like Shorty Mac and then Richie Honori, who's a drummer for the band Sweet. it's like so wide, like the metalheads and the hip hop artists, right? So so American Fables is the launch for all my IP, all my properties, so that you see one version of them, and then it starts growing into another thing. So I have, Damon Mysterion, which is a kind of a Doctor Strange meets Shaft premise, entree into the new worlds, but more mainstream. And then the same thing with The Year I Loved Her, which is 500 Days of Summer with Asians. So like playing off of the DC Comics Young Romance. So this would be the beginnings for new storytelling. So, there's new things that are happening, new kinds of storytelling. I'm getting prepared for little things like Are you guys familiar with Quibi?
No.
Quibi is Jeffrey Katzenberg's new, and I think Steven Spielberg is involved with it as well too. Quibi means quick bites. Quibi is a app that will only run on mobile phones.
Oh, wow.
Mobile, and mobile centric, and all the content is done in 8-minute bites, quick bites. And so basically, millennials, they don't. The thinking is that nobody really goes past their phone. I mean, you ask anybody now, they're like, I don't want to watch television. I want, even though people older than 25 are really into television, a lot of millennials are like younger ones. They're I want to watch on my iPhone. I want to watch YouTube. So the idea is to create 8-minute episodes, and up to 2 hours is for a full season, and it's only vertical. So you've got that phone. They're only shot vertically.
Wow.
So that's the new kind of platform, and so comic books are more conducive to that. This is a transition to that, where you can do comics, and so. But for me as an artist, it's less expensive. Right? As a director, I'm like, I can't spend. I want to have these sci-fi concepts, but I can do it as a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
I can do limited animation. I can tie it in with my music and create all these fantasy worlds and work out one version. It's like a version of in music we have the mixtape. They release the mixtapes, and the mixtapes are all songs are alternate versions before you actually release the real song.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I want this to be like in terms of so it's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of like what is it? Christopher Nolan's Memento. It started out. Jonathan Nolan wrote it as a short story. So storytelling we should be able to play. We should be able to create in various worlds and various forms, and be more accessible. Like I should be able to wake up in the morning, write a short story, put it out there, and then let the world see it, and then let it evolve into finally the feature film or video game and anything else, or a Quibi episodes.
Now, also, I guess your comic is going to be a webtoon as well, right? Correct?
It's on Webtoons right now.
Yeah, webtoon.
Yeah.
I find the whole webtoon platform to be interesting because it first started out as a platform for Korean
Yes.
comics, so it's starting to become more, I guess, universal. And there's a lot of American artists who are submitting.
Yeah,
things.
Rob Liefeld's on there.
Yeah.
A number of other people. They're testing their stuff, their
Yeah.
IP over there.
Yeah,
It's faster.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you also have a movie that you're working on too, right?
Yeah, I'm working on a rock and roll movie. It's a pet project. It's going to take long because I'm just shooting it. It's independently financed. Although I am talking to some people right now, but I want it to be kind of where I get to act and direct and write. I wrote it, acting and directing, produced the music, performing the music, and I get to do the comic book that's related to that too. Yeah. I want it to be new storytelling, different kind. It's a combination of Purple Rain meets Hard Day's Night, and so I play. Cool. So to maximize that kind of a story, I play a former pop star who fell out of favor. His bandmate, his girlfriend runs away with his bandmate. His other girlfriend was a pop star who's just forgotten him. And so what happens is that he becomes an illustrator comic books and works in animation, and so that allows me to play and show some things in storytelling in the film, like Quentin Tarantino did, I think in oh gosh, I'm just trying to think, Kill Bill, where he added animation.
Oh yeah, I love that scene.
So I wanted to do that, where I can do that in the film, but so his sister is an influencer. She sends it out to all these other influencers. The new music, it starts going, it starts getting buzz, and so they've got to create. He has to do a new streaming launch of the new music because there's so much buzz on it. But in the meantime, all his ex-girlfriends and all his previous ghosts from the past have to be reckoned with as they're going through it. And so it's a little bit of like Fellini's 8.5. There's a little bit of just a lot of different things. Like I said, Hard Day's Night, little comedy, Purple Rain.
Right.
I want to play. I wrote about 100 songs for the film. Did about 32. I think I'm going to use 32. I'm going to put it up, kind of cap it off of there. And but I play in different genres. Same thing, like I'm doing the comics. I'm doing rockabilly. I'm doing EDM, doing hip hop, and now since I've got some new collaborators, I might have actually do different versions of the songs, and it's nice because I get to organically grow it. So the intent of this thing is to be more like Francis Ford Coppola, his idea of what's called the live movie, where the director is the artist, and you, as you are doing the movie, you get the insight into how it's being made. So you watch the artist create it, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm having access into how I'm creating, the insight into what's going on in my head in the songs, and then also using different medium like poetry and comic books to convey parts of the story. Wow. As a big whole. So new storytelling.
Sounds like a huge undertaking.
Yeah. And
100 songs you wrote, and wow.
Yeah. I don't stop. I mean, I know it's weird. I know people who played with Prince, who knew him, and I have a friend that the new Michael Jackson, he was Michael Jackson's family's spiritual advisor, and they would always tell me that they just never slept, like they never stopped creating, and so I thought maybe I should have that work ethic. I'm gonna try it. Well, not try, I'll do it. There's no try, Yoda.
So how long ago did you sort of think about this movie, from like conceptually?
Years ago, actually, but I didn't really get into it until about a year and a half ago. It's evolved, and so it's because people would tell they always tell you don't do everything. I'd say I'm going to be writer, director, actor, blah, blah, and then they would say, oh no, you can't do that. You need to focus on one thing. I'm like, but hanging out with YouTubers, I mean, YouTube generation, social media, they do everything. So I don't know where that kind of thinking comes from, but it's a necessity now. When you go see a streaming service, you're not just watching a generic show. You're watching George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones. You're watching J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. You're looking at Aquafina's movie, right? Yeah. It's got to be branded. It's all these different people. It needs to be branded, and so we need people. That's why I said the live movie. People will need to know who the person is behind the camera, behind the art. That's the only way we can distinguish ourselves, and especially for me, with Filipinos, Asians, that's what elevates us more, because we can actually, we can actually mimic very well in terms of voices, in terms of music. I saw something where some guy was singing like Kenny Rogers.
Oh wow!
And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like but I think he got like 1 million hits or something like that, and people loved it because it was so novel. And that's what's changing in this industry. Now that Simu Liku is playing Shang-Chi, you see that, that's a big thing. So we need more rock stars. We need, but in traditional white roles. That's what I think. Rather than, oh, let's make it central. It's all about Filipino centric. We need to have Filipinos in the center, like in a Tom Cruise role, in a Prince role, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they want to see overseas. That's what I've seen.
How much further do you think we have to go until we get there?
You know what? We're probably farther ahead than what we think. I think what the thing that's stopping people is that they don't realize they actually have the power to do things right now. Around the industry, when I talk to different people, there are producers, there are bigger, people who are really powerful, people of color and women that are really into finding new voices, new faces. I think I was talking to, who was that? Oh, I was at a dinner with Cheryl Kay, who was on Crazy Rich Asians soundtrack. So we were talking, and she told me that she was like John Chu actively found her on YouTube. I think half that soundtrack was John Chu looking for new people, new talent.
Okay,
that's what's happening right now. They're really looking for people who are multi-talented polymaths, and so if everyone embraces that, because other people are thinking, "Oh, I'm just an actor," but oh man, like I go through the Filipino community, and everyone does everything, right? They're like, there's that joke of I'm just thinking the islander who knows how to do, fix the car. I'll be the driver. I'll be the butler. But
yeah, speaking about that, I mean, when we interviewed Caitlin, I was so impressed by what she's been doing. I mean, she's well versed in in music.
Right.
She's a
Great
writer.
Voice too.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
she's a writer. She's a director. I mean, wow.
An actress.
An actress, yes.
Yeah.
So
a comic book.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully,
she dances. She does everything. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
so
awesome.
so I thought that was pretty amazing. So I'm looking forward to seeing all these projects that she's working on come to fruition. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this stuff. It's pretty awesome.
I remember you mentioning when we first met you at Cool Creative that like you're seeing artists, and I think in the Philippines, and to a fault they were like too humble.
Well, it's not even humble. There's the colonialism.
Negative, yeah,
it's in the DNA. One of the things that I had to do a few years ago was to what's called rewrite the DNA. And I had studied, and I've talked to people, especially involved in sports up in the Bay Area, and in science, and part of it is that you're conditioned in your DNA. It's passed down in your genes to actually react to certain things because your ancestors did. It's in your DNA. You got to rewrite it. And so the problem with Filipinos, as opposed to maybe Koreans and Japanese were all of a sudden post World War II. There was a way of like Americans looked at them as like, wow, they were the enemy, and suddenly all of a sudden they're raised in the platform. Filipinos, some reason it was more they embraced the fact that Americans, whites were better than us, and so out of all the Asian groups, we lag. We're actually really, really extremely talented, probably possibly more talented than a lot. I mean, I'm not just saying that. You can see it. I've seen. I know artists in the animation industry. I see dancers. I mean, you clearly see the dancers, and that are really all Filipino, right? In terms of Asian, and when you see hip hop, and yet we don't go out there because as much as because primarily what happens is when I was over there teaching workshops, Filipinos tended to be like, oh, sir, I'm not really that good. It's okay. I don't like. I'm like, no, you're awesome. Here I am, like I don't know, like pumping them up. You're so amazing. Like, oh, sir, I'm not really. It's okay. I just want to do my work. I'm like, oh crap, and that's to a fault all across. That needs to change. If they just realized that they knew that they could do everything. You can do everything right now. There's nothing stopping you. I mean, the one thing that stops is it's interesting because, I'd go to the YouTube Space events, and they have filmmakers that would talk I think I'm just trying to remember the director who was over there. I know. I mean, I wasn't at the Patty Jenkins ones, but there was another director. He had mentioned they kept talking about. They would ask him, like, these influencers, what would you do right now as a filmmaker? What would help? And he said, and they all kept saying, use your phone, use your iPhone, you have more power. You can create, and so what happens is that you have right now, I think Steven Soderbergh,
right,
shot his last 3 or 4 films on the iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all these other people. They're just shooting on iPhone. Claude Lelouch, who's a French director, I think he directed one of my favorite films, which is Man and the Woman. Same thing. He's an older director, probably in his 70s and 80s.
Yeah, there's Tangerine's probably one of the most well-known movies made on a smartphone.
Shoot it on a smartphone. Yeah, and then George Miller, said he wants to do shoot a movie on a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is that, so you'll get around, like I have a lot of white friends, and you say this stuff, and then they go, well, you need to do this, and you got kind of like do this, but then I'm like, you're really overthinking like that. But then I see, but then you see Asians go like, no, screw that guy, we're going to do it because if George Miller says he's going to do it, and Steven Soderbergh says it, but then these other guys are always putting you down. Listen to Soderbergh, right?
Right.
They're on your side, but then you get the Filipinos, and then they start sounding like these guys who are putting, like, white guys who will go, yes, but you still need to do lighting, you need to do the or whatever, and you're like, well, this is why nothing's going to happen, right? Because when you have a guy like Steve Lacy, who's a hip hop artist, who produced Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, and he exclusively does it on his iPhone and on GarageBand. He won't record on anything else. And that's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I know I talk with hip hop artists. They're cheating. I mean, nobody believes it, but that's cheating in the best way. You know what I mean? But yet everyone keeps thinking, I have to do this, or else I'm a failure, or I'm not really real. I'm not legitimate. That's not true. All the best, it's just a tool, and it's the energy, and it's your voice, and so we need to understand that. As for me, as I know this Filipino, so that's the next thing for us, because you can, it's just a medium,
right? Right.
It's just a medium.
You sort of have to be cognizant of how technology changes and the way it's used. I mean, that's sort of thinking of being a naysayer, not being willing to experiment and see how these technological changes can benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like the difference between how successful Amazon is now, and where Toys R Us isn't.
Right.
So
it's that sort of thing. We have to start thinking like real immigrants. Immigrants, they come in. See, the original American work ethic was that I pull myself up by my bootstraps, and I did it all myself, and and I achieved the American dream, which is actually really a lie, because most of these people actually came from privilege. I know. Oh, I was just reminded, Larry Niven, the great sci-fi writer, who wrote a Foundation and some of these other great sci-fi novels. He came from a background. His family was extremely wealthy, so that gives him time to actually create, right? So anybody, all these people had actually access to wealth previously, or they acquired their wealth on the backs of slaves, or the oppressed people, that sort of thing. So that's not they didn't build it on themselves. There's no real persons that. But the immigrant, like, I know Stan Lee. When I interviewed Stan wrote a foreword for one of the books I wrote, or I contributed to, and Stan, the immigrant families, Jewish, and comic books were created. Comic books and motion pictures and music were highly created by they were created by immigrants, people, because you remember the turn of the century, the more privileged people watched opera. They watched expensive things. And so the common man they read dime store novels. They read things that, they went to the penny arcade and they watched movies. So the Jews and Catholics, from the East Coast, they got involved in movies. They got involved in the clubs, creating music, jazz, blacks. It was all for the common man, poor whites. So that is for the common person. So we have to get back to that, understanding those kinds of roots, and helping each other out, because that's what they did. And so collaborating, the concepts of collab, especially in YouTube, should be more, because they're not going to fund you. You have to do things first, initiate, and then you'll be able to get funded at some point. So that's my goal, to let people know that.
Yeah, it's similar to a lot of the comic book creators we talk to. It's like they want to get hooked up with a publisher, for example. I mean, they can't. They still have to create some samples first before they start doing the pitching process.
Well, it's always been the same.
Yeah.
Brian Bendis was a indie comic artist, writer. Wasn't great, but he found a following, and then a few years later, and when he did Jinx and some of these other projects, he ended up at Marvel, right? Now he's at DC. Robert Kirkman was independent, right? Those are self-funded, and so that's what I'm saying is that you have to start off. You can't really pitch to DC and Marvel, to be honest with you. They do have their programs, but to be honest, DC and Marvel really their focus is on getting the big names. If you become a big name in the indie world, they'll get you in there. But mostly, look who's writing the books. Like people who are working on who are working screenwriters, people who are working in film and television, and that sort of thing. J.J. Abrams doing Spider-Man with his son, right?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So that's really what they're focused. So start off indie, show that you can, play with the big boys.
Yeah,
and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, people try to pitch to the big two, but I'm also talking about even like the indie publishers. So it's like sometimes they won't even look at you until you can prove that you've actually sold and completed a full book. Before so.
Well, that's all. It's all that. I mean, people think it's not about doing samples. It's like you got to prove that you can actually play baseball.
Yeah,
like it's the minor leagues, right? Then before you get in the major leagues, and so that's how in football. You go through training camp and then you go through it, and so people have to understand it's not just if I did 8 pages, it's a sample. Like, well, that's akin to the drills for throwing the football. Or the how to pitch, but you don't you're not going a full game of live bullets, and so full game of live bullets is a full comic book, and knowing how to do the schedule. So that's really what you need to do. Same thing with indie film.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but from your experience, I mean, what's some advice that you can give to somebody who's trying to get a project that they're working on, whether it's a comic book or a movie, to the next level, or actually to find the right collaborators.
Okay, so finding the right collaborators, knowing that when you collaborate with somebody, if you're only a writer, know that if you're not going to pay an artist as a work for hire, then that artist needs to be co-creator. So if you really want to own it, completely sole credit as a creator, you need to pay the artist, and their rate. That's just the way it is. Because remember, this is I'm going back to, this is a highly competitive place now. It's like saying, oh, I really want to, play, for the NFL, for the Chargers or the Rams. But you're like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is how you do it, and saying no, you need to make it easier for me. Why? What's happening now is if you're going to be doing this, you're going up. My warning is that you're going up against 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds, 14-year-olds that are writer, director, producer, actor, dancer, blah, 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 everything. That's all I see. I know that world, and people don't like it. They don't want to. They don't want to hear. You see writers go, but I just want to write. I'm like, first preference is for the person that they can brand, right? It's lifestyle. They want to know that they can brand you. They don't want to just brand your IP. They want to brand you, right? Because how many times have you heard like, I gotta meet George R. R. Martin, right? You want to know that dude. You want to know Stephen King. So what is Stephen King doing? That's the age that we're living in. So if anything, I highly encourage, the first persons that I will encourage are the people who are multi-talented. If you're a writer that's trying to get into writing, I can't say anything else for you guys. You better pay an artist to help you, or you better collaborate with your best friend who's an artist and give credit. But understand, you can't get through this industry because they need to know the full spectrum of things. So think about it that way.
Cool. I guess we can take a little break and go into our Thunder Round, which is sort of like our off the path set of questions. I'll take Alex, go ahead and take it away.
Sure. All right. First question. Describe your perfect pizza.
Vegan. That's all I can eat. Honestly, I mean, as a creator, I can't. I mean, I have all these issues. I mean, health issues. Mm-hmm. So I can't eat anything that messes up with my ADHD or dyslexia or whatever, that kind of thing.
What kind of veggies do you like on your pizza?
Oh man, I love mushrooms.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah, mushrooms and mushrooms are like the top for me.
Cool. Okay, next question. In Shazam, Billy Batson yells Shazam to transform into a superhero. What word would you use to transform into a superhero?
What word?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And what superpowers would you have?
The ability to move through space and time. Because if you move through space and time, that means that you have super speed. You can fly. You have literally everything. Because it that actually endows you. I mean, like for example, super speed is really just the time slowed down for you, or you being able to move. Strength wise, space and time, same thing. Because if time is slowed, then all of a sudden the gravitational pull and everything else is also slowed down, and you can actually lift certain things. So that's kind of, I think that's what they did in Man of Steel. That's why when he hits on the ground and everything floats up,
it's a little slower.
Yeah, it's slow, and so that implies that Superman is actually not about the weight and mass, but it's more about like the ability to traverse through space and time. So that's what I would do.
Just a little scientific.
Yeah. It's in the comic book that I wrote, so so I cheated there.
There you go. Okay, if you had a chance to go on a one-way trip back into time to change an event, what event would it be?
Oh, that'd be a good one.
One-way trip.
One-way trip.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta really think about that. Oh yeah, the event when I found out that the girl that I liked was thought I was weird, and all her friends thought I was crazy, and I would change the event where I go where I vowed I would vow that because I would actually from here I would actually get better. And tap into what my potential. Like I would tell myself, you could do this, because I think I grew up thinking I could do that, and then I thought, no, I can't do it. So that little colonialism came in, where it's like, oh, so I would change it there.
Nice. Okay.
That's a story. Thank you.
All right, next question. We could encounter a crash-landed alien from another galaxy. What 3 movies do you have this alien watch while you're working on your projects?
Oh, the 3 movies.
Yeah.
Because you're too busy to watch them, so
So yeah, so what are 3 movies that he would have to watch
Yeah,
for
while you're
Yeah.
working.
Yeah. Oh, that's easy. Superman the movie, Star Wars, and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Cool.
That's the bedrock of. Literally, those 3 movies are the bedrock of modern day superhero movies. So that's like going back in the time and going, stick with these things. That's
It's a formula to follow.
it's a formula
right?
for every Marvel movie and DC movie.
Okay. Last question. You're at your favorite comic book shop and you meet a kid that is new to comics, and he wants some advice on what to read. What comics do you recommend?
Can I give him 10?
Sure.
Whatever you want.
Okay. Watchmen, Dark Knight. That's those what you call it? Grant Morrison's Superman, All Star Superman. Kingdom Come. Let's see, what was the other one? Frank Miller's Daredevil. I would do a compilation of the EC comics, any one of the horror Tales from the Crypt. Okay. If they had a couple, I know they have a compilation of that. I would do the Fantastic Four, like an omnibus of the Jack Kirby Fantastic Four. Silver Surfer by Stan Lee. Just that's Shakespeare. Like I read that thing. That's amazing. Oh wow! God, I know there's so many of them. Like
two more to go.
What's that? Two more.
I think there's 2 more.
Doom Patrol by Grant Morrison is another one, and I know there's another Marvel. Oh, the Avengers Kree Skrull War.
I grew up on that one.
Yeah, that.
I mean, I read the reprints, but that made
the
an
reprints.
impression.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
Because that's what I read, and I was like, whoa, that. I mean, actually, I wish if they had an omnibus of that entire Kree Skrull with the Captain Marvel saga, including his death. That was the absolute, just probably one of the greatest comic book series ever.
That's when I became like a huge fan of the Vision.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool. And I was actually one more off of with Adam Warlock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of the greatest comic books ever written.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll do one more question.
Jim Starlin though.
Right. I'll do one more question. I know you love music, so I'm curious to see what kind of a. When you mentioned mixtape earlier too.
Yeah.
Let's just say you're back in when we used to use cassette tapes, and you're going on a long road trip, say cross country. What kind of music would you put on that?
Okay, I would put on Bruce Springsteen, "Dancing in the Dark," is one song that I would stick on there.
I think Bruce Springsteen, severely underrated.
Oh, he's the greatest songwriter ever. I mean, to next to Bob Dylan and of course, I think Lennon and McCartney. More McCartney though. Now that I've studied and read more, it's like, oh, McCartney is actually a better songwriter. Yeah. So my mixtape would go "Dancing in the Dark," the Beatles' "Let It Be," Elvis Presley's "Little Less Conversation." The original version, because it was written for Aretha Franklin.
Oh, okay.
Originally, and then he was like, "No, give it to me." Like, he's a big Aretha Franklin fan. That's why he loved it. I would go Public Enemy. Whatchamacallit? Oh gosh, Fight the Power. What else is there? Prince DMSR, Dance Music Sex Romance. I think that's there's a lot. All those other my mixtape would be so crazy. I would have so many different things. I
guess eclectic would be a better word, yeah.
Yeah, super eclectic. I would have a lot of acoustic. I would have jazz, EDM. Yeah, but in my mind, I would have to have some things like Bob Dylan in there. If I was going on a road trip and I would be thinking about songwriting, a lot of Prince, a lot of Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson, early Elvis, because that was the basis for punk and country rock and a lot of that stuff. What else would I think? Of course, the Beatles and Rolling Stones. So Satisfaction is one of my all-time favorites. I like the songs where I love doing the stuff that's live, and the Ramones is like one of my favorite bands. So
Okay.
yeah,
That is pretty eclectic so far.
yeah, super eclectic. I mean, I've had friends that I drive them wild because I have like, and there's stations like I've got that's a 105.1, the country station, and I've got 92.3, the hip hop station, and I like keep going back and forth on it.
I guess I sort of want to go back and talk about your trip to Asia.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us about that. I mean, which countries did you go to?
So every year I go to Asia, and then there's different countries. This year I was in Philippines is always the first there, and then there's we have a condo over there in Bonifacio Global City.
Oh, nice.
I heard that's real nice. Like
it's the Beverly Hills of Philippines. You go over there, and it's. I feel like I'm still in the U.S. It's a combination of like Florida. It's like a combination of Miami and Los Angeles and San Francisco put together. Right. So, and then there was Korea. No. This year, I'm sorry, it was two stopovers in Japan. Usually, I mean, I'll just switch it around. But this year is two stopovers in Tokyo, in Haneda, and then what is it? Singapore, of course, and then Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. So those are great. Kuala Lumpur was more the Indiana Jones thing that I wanted to do, and visit the temples. And so my IG, I'm like just mimicking Harrison Ford, because it was a temple. It was like 3-4 temples in the same. Kept going deeper, and it felt like I felt like it was an adventure. Only there's tourists, unfortunately, but so yeah, that was great. And then also shopping is the best over there. It's really great. So those are but the previous years it's been like Korea, Seoul, Korea, Thailand, Bangkok. That was really fun. Other places like that. So I love it. It's different. They're most people don't realize that they're the building is much more progressive in terms of it's very futuristic, future thinking. There's a lot of stuff that's going on over there. It's shocking. I mean, it's weird coming back to the States because it feels so dirty. Even though they're doing better in LA, but man, over in Japan. Culturally, I mean, I don't understand. It's crazy. They go onto the metro and the subway, and then it's packed and filled, but it doesn't stink. And they're clean, and they're all every single person is fashionable. Every elderly person, it looks like they're still kicking it with. I mean, their fashion is from high fashion, and then but then. If they're sick, they've got they've got something over their mouths, and then they leave, and the floor is spotless, and I don't understand how is it possible.
Plus, I heard they don't have public trash cans, right?
They don't. I'm like, people. It's funny because people carry the stuff. Like I had to carry it. I'm like, I got trash, and then when I found it, it was like, okay, cool. But then you know what it is? That stops you from eating. Because you're going, there's no trash, so you don't eat. So you wait for the next time you're gonna go eat, and so you're not throwing trash all over the place, and then you probably lose weight and stuff like that. And so it's really great. But if you're in Singapore, yeah, they're probably they'll whip you for
right.
Yeah, literally they'll whip you, and they're just. I mean, it's the worst.
Speaking of. Since you have sort of
but it's great. It's the best going to Singapore.
Seeing as how you're vegetarian, I mean, did you find that a challenge going abroad?
Not really.
No.
Philippines have there's been an explosion in vegan food in the Philippines. So they actually have vegan adobo.
Oh.
Yeah, and the vegan chicken adobo, vegan. I mean, just it's amazing. And I can eat fish though.
Oh, okay, pescatarian, I guess.
Yeah, pescatarian. So going overseas, it's fine. With the fish, it's not like my own options are like steak houses and burger joints because Yeah, it's different over there. Or chicken.
Do you have any advice for pretty much creatives to sort of, stay on track and I guess to just, get their stuff done?
Yeah. Well, number one, you can hack your brain to be hungry. So for your work. So what happens is that instead of eating during the point where you're really hungry for eating, what you do is actually you draw or you write or you create music. Because what happens is that that hunger translates in because you're fed the hunger, and then you're fed food, and then you're satiated. If you're hungry and you create and you write, it creates a greater hunger for creating and writing because the mind triggers into something different. Mm-hmm. In terms of focusing, the very first thing you should be doing is looking at art and I mean visually. If you're going to write, visually write, look at art and then have music playing in your head, but mostly art actually. And then if you're going to be writing, the first thing to do is actually spit it out, just mumbo jumbo. Or the other thing that because I teach classes on screenwriting and one of the things I teach is that what you do is to copy the masters. So if you get a screenplay, start copying the screenplay in front of you, because the brain doesn't know that you didn't write it. It just knows the information, and so it actually thinks that you wrote it, processes it in your head, and so when you copy, then you all of a sudden you're after 10 minutes, 5 minutes of doing it, you transition into a state of actually writing like that person. So that rewrites your brain. So there's a lot more things, but those are things that you can do to be more creative and to be more focused.
I'm definitely going to re-listen to this podcast. Now, specifically for Filipino creatives, mm-hmm. Is there anything that any sort of nuggets of knowledge you can sort of drop for Filipino creatives specifically?
Okay, so I guess for Filipino creators in the film industry, I think.
I guess maybe sort of if you want to talk film, but I was kind of thinking more broadly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, focus on the art. Focus on creating, because too many people. What happens is that if you're going to do it, here's the thing. If you're going to create something, we have to get out of the mentality that because people always talk about, well, go for your second or third, fall back on it. You'll fall back on your fallback. I don't know anybody who's really actually gone anywhere because they had a backup. Because every time they do the backup, they're doing the backup instead of creating. So if you're going to do it, you're going to have to be really, really, really committed to it. So that's number one. Number two, if you're a Filipino actor, don't just go for acting. Just forget about it. To be honest with you, when I talk about forgetting about acting, what you want to do, I mean, it's pointless to be going out and doing auditions. It really is pointless because there's 99% of it is you're not in, it's not you. For any of us, right? And even I mean, sure, you're going to compete for roles, but what you have to do is actually create your own material. You have to write the role that you want. Remember, we're in a new world. You have the power to create. So what you want to do is actually focus more on creating your reality. Of write the role that you want. You watch a movie and then write that role. So if you're an actor, don't wait to audition. Just start creating webisodes, creating series, because they'll discover you, right? You'll get around. Focus on that more than anything else. So always focus on the work. Focus on creating your own intellectual property, IP. Focus on creating the person that you want to be, the superstar that you want to be. Focus on creating the music that you want to play, because you'll get discovered. You're going to be different, And also the other thing is that work within the community. What I mean by that is that all Filipinos have to make a commitment to help each other out. You got a camera, you got you got a location, you got food, everything else. Everyone help each other out, because that is the work ethic of the immigrants. Like, that's just translate what we've done. You know how communities, you go, oh, we support the store because it's Filipino. Oh, we support each other. We'll help each other out. So the communities, I had a black friend that said, wow, it's amazing. Like, a lot of these Asians don't speak English, but yet their businesses are thriving. Why? Because they're collaborating, right?
Right.
Yeah. They're telling each other, help each other out. Translate that into the way that we are in the motion picture industry, because that's exactly how the Jewish community did it.
And the Chinese.
Yeah. Right? They're really good at, and the gay community, they go, oh, he's gay? Send him over. Oh, he's Jewish? Send him over. Because they have an ethic that says no one left behind. We will not. We have to actually really stick to that thing where we say, I'm going to make an effort that none of my people are going to be left behind, and that'll help, pay it forward for each other. So those are a few of the things.
Speaking of collaborating, we usually have this part of the podcast we call superhero shoutouts.
Sure.
So is there any person or group of people that you want to say thank you to?
Oh, yeah. Shorty Mac, who I'm working with, he's worked with Snoop Dogg and Pharrell. We're collaborating on the superhero concept. I just released the preview of. He's one of the guys that I really love. He's great. I've got collaborators. Alec Arnold. He's a guy that I use his camera and everything else, but he's a sounding board for me. I really like, and he's Hapa.
Like half.
Basically, he's like a quarter Filipino.
Okay.
So he identifies Filipino.
Okay.
I was just like, that's cool. But he looks white, but his grandmother's Filipino. So he eats Filipino food. He loves it, and there's a lot of people that I would. I have a friend named Ernest who's hilarious. He's on social media, but he'll probably never hear this until I tell him. This guy is the biggest connector in the world, but the biggest heart. And I think one of the things that I really admire about him is that in this industry, there are people, and then they connect you, and then they go, so they want something from you. Literally doesn't want anything from you. All he wants is like, he's like my like a personal assistant, because he knows all the parties and everything else. I know who's doing them, but then he's just on top of the thing, and I really love that. You need that, you need that kind of friendship to get by in this industry. So those are a few people, and I love Rodney Cahudo.
I've yet to meet him.
Yeah, he's great, because I just like, he's very supportive, and so Caitlin's amazing. I get inspired by her, and all those guys in the film creative. I just love them to death, because we're a strong, committed community, helping each other.
Yeah, it seemed like that from the networking event that both Alex and I went to.
Mm-hmm.
That was incredible.
Yeah, it's great.
Leo, thank you so much for this powerful episode.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, hopefully it's helpful.
It is, man. Yeah. Like I said, I'm gonna have to re-listen to it a couple of times myself.
Oh, great.
Is there anything that we missed that you'd like our audience to know about?
Once again?
Is there anything that we missed that you'd like our audience to know about?
There's probably a lot, but that's another 2 hours.
Sure.
No, yeah, just again, I just want to emphasize is to be creating your own material. Visualize, imagine yourself the way that you want to be, and then now the power is in your hands. So be a creator and learn everything. It's okay to learn everything. You can do it because it's required now. Just like it's required in sports. If you want to be Tom Brady, you got to put in the work. You want to be Steph Curry, you got to, shoot from, the parking lot and make it.
Right. I mean,
right?
What you just said, to learn everything, it's, I can sort of relate because I'm a graphic designer by trade.
Sure.
But, there's different ways you can apply graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not the best logo designer. I'm not the best print guy. I'm not the best, all this. But I try to sort of learn a little bit of everything.
Sure.
Because it also makes me better at coming up with creative solutions for clients. So,
Absolutely.
I might not be able to work on it, but I can suggest this guy's going to work on it for you, or something to that effect.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
or to build teams that'll come up with
That's
solutions.
what, that's what we want to do.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Leo, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Great. Thank you. Anytime.
Yeah.
Call me on.
Alex, close out the show.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning into the Hall 8 Show podcast, where we love showcasing independent creators like Leo Partible here. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would love a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a comment on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, please share our episodes using the hashtag Hall8Show. Peace, cheers, and if you'd like to recommend a guest for our show, please reach out to us on our social media platforms or our website, hall8.com. And since we're at Comic-Con, the exhibit hall is now closed.